since Brian Carroll is in studio here with me, the right place to start, Brian, is congratulating Offaly for a change, because I think since you start contributing to this show, we haven't had too much to shout about from an Offaly point of view. I know it's only Christy Ring. I don't want to patronise you.
Yeah, I suppose consecutive relegations didn't help, and I know, look, in fairness to the guys, I think they learned from their mistakes last year. You know, not getting to the Christy Ring final last year was a big blow to Offaly hurling, and in fairness to Michael Fennelly and his backroom team, you know, Johnny Kelly, you have to remember, is in there, excellent coach. Manager Paddy obviously knows him so well, as I do myself, and you know, they got things right this year. They put a lot of consistency in their team, not too many chopping and changing. I suppose they got to see a lot of players in Offaly last year, and you know, they got things right, as I said, and they were very comprehensive. They played 8 games this year and they won all 8 games. They averaged 39 points. But as you said,
they're too good for the Christy Ring. We can all agree.
Exactly. But probably the big win this year, and Christy Ring was important to get back up to Joe McDonagh, but I think the big one was winning the Division 2A league, which puts them back up to Division 1, because they did beat Antrim and they did beat Kerry in those games. So like that was a big thing, and Carlow as well. So, you know, getting back up to Division 1 hurling was probably the real big thing for next year. Yeah. But the only worry I'd have, Wooly, not alone for Offaly and these other teams, you've seen it happen Westmeath, you see Antrim going up to Leinster Championship, coming straight back down. It's the yo-yo effect that a lot of these teams are put through. Laois have been, I won't say lucky, but they've done well to stay up in the second year. They were probably lucky the fact that there was 6 teams now in Leinster. So there's a bit of an issue there for these Joe McDonagh, Christy Ring teams, where, you know, it's a yo-yo, year on, year off kind of a thing, and that's something that needs to be looked maybe at a higher level.
Yeah, it's an All-Ireland semi-final weekend. We can't get into that because it is a difficult, it's difficult to know how to fix that. Michael Fennelly says, Paddy, I think the Christy Ring, the Laurie Marr and Nicky Rackard competitions are kind of being forgotten about and suppressed. Let's be honest about it. The promotion of it is very, very poor. That falls on the JEA and broadcasting companies. Something has to be done about it. Now, if Michael Fennelly said that to me, I'd turn around to Michael Fennelly and say, here, Michael, before you managed Offaly and the Christy Ring, what interest did you have in those 3 competitions?
Exactly. Sometimes it only hits you when you're a part of it. But, you know, and you can put Joe McDonagh into that as well. Like, you know, I don't know enough about those Joe McDonagh teams, and I think if it was on the television more, I certainly would. But he's completely right. And I don't think it falls on the broadcasting companies at all, myself. Like, at the end of the day, they have to make a turnover. They have to make, you know, they have to make everything count. But it certainly does fall on the GA. Like, I often make the point, when the rugby is being shown on RTE, the Six Nations, they have to show the ladies one as well, which a lot of people get great entertainment out of. But that comes with the rights that you buy. I think something similar should go on in GA. I mean, it's huge. Sometimes I think we underestimate how big it is in the country. It's huge for RT to have it, or whatever other broadcaster. And I suppose with that should be an onus on them to at least provide some of the lower level games, which are as entertaining, I think, at their own level. And maybe it's something to be pushed out to other broadcasters as well.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of makes sense. More broadcasters, more commitments to show lower division, because you don't have a God-given right to be broadcast either, Brian, you know, that kind of way. Like, there has to be levels, and there's more interest in the higher level, and that's it. But so you can completely understand from the media's point of view. I'm going to start off this week by complaining, and I did the exact same complaining last December. Why do we not have a week's breathing here, Brian? I'm looking around. There's a regurgitated Sean Finn interview from 2 weeks ago. I think it was the All-Ireland series launch or something, and not even spectacular quotes. And that's all I've seen in the week so far in an All-Ireland semi-final week. We're still kind of coming down from the quarterfinals. Jeez, give us this week to get over them, and let's build it right up the following week.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because I know the GA are going to say they were hampered with the COVID and they had to fit in, you know, all the fixtures within a tight time frame, and then try and allow for clubs maybe at the back end of the year. But as you said, it's very unfair, and it's very unfair to the All-Ireland quarter-final winners. You know, the likes of Cork and Waterford, what they've come through. You know, they've come through week on week, and maybe they'll be happy with that, but it's a big ask to go on now and try and hurl again this week, especially when you play Waterford style of hurling, where it's gung-ho, and they'll be trying to aim to bring that at least and more against Limerick at the weekend. So you're right, there's such a short turnaround. It's very hard to raise the profile of this All-Ireland semi-final at the weekend, and even from, I suppose, if you were a supporter, like, trying to sort out tickets so quickly and organise your time, it's mad. But as I said, the GA are going to fall back on the whole thing that they were, you know, their hands are kind of held a little bit in this regard.
They'll say it's an exceptional year and their hands were tied, but at the same time, Paddy, you put that back 1 week. there's only 2 club championships that are delayed then, the 2 All-Ireland finalists. Is it in the bigger scheme of things for player welfare, not just player welfare, for general interest, to be able to ram up some promotion of it for the players' bodies? If the players' bodies aren't 100%, we're not going to see as good a game as we would have. The 2 weeks, geez, an All-Ireland quarter-final to a semi-final. I remember, geez, it used to be a month that we were giving out about the month, and now we're down to a week.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do feel bad going back in it, because 6 months ago we said any way you can play it at all, we'll be happy. But I think we've probably had 5 or 6 months since it was set, and maybe to say, do you know what, we have maybe one more week. Even if the club this year spills into just the new year, into January, I think it's going to be okay for, as you said, player welfare. But also, now that we are to the heat of the end of the season and we're getting multiple thousands of people in the stadium, let's build it up. And look, I think it's just been very stiff by all authorities. Whoever is making sure that this is being pushed, I think it's a little bit stiff, especially given that the times we're in, that, we know that after this there'll be a period where maybe the club drags on a little bit. It might drag into next year, and it might be messy for another 12 months, just by a couple of weeks. But I think we should be able to say, yeah, it's All-Ireland semi-final. I think, as Brian said, the quarter-finalists, and they haven't just lost their provincial, so they're on the road for 3-4 weeks now. And lucky, they're 2 young teams, which is great. But if you look at Waterford the last 2 weeks, and we'll probably talk and touch on it, they have probably, they have faltered in the last few minutes in both games. And playing Limerick, who are another level again, they could be in serious trouble if they falter for 10-15 minutes near the end of that game.
Yeah, no, they definitely will. There's no doubt whether they can get a lead on them. Sean Finn has been talking about, Limerick are going for back-to-back All-Irelands and 3 All-Irelands in 4 years. It's unprecedented what they're doing, 3 Munsters in a row. And he was talking about the external noise. They're well aware of what's been talked about them, the greatness and maybe emulating Kilkenny. And he says it's external noise, but it's very easy that creeps into the camp. He said the narrative could be different in 3 weeks' time if we don't go through a semi-final. It's important to acknowledge it, but it doesn't really creep into our thoughts at all. I can imagine Carroll and Courage, they cover every box, talking about it, accepting that it's there, but throwing it out to the players and making them come up, just block it out.
Even the words he's used to actually acknowledge it and reference it in that interview just shows how maybe ahead of the curve they are in terms of accepting those sort of situations and scenarios, and they've never been kind of burdened with what they're doing from this Limerick perspective, because we all know Limerick, had to wait till 73 to win the All-Ireland, and that burden of expectancy was never on this team. And it was phenomenal the way they were able to come along and win that All-Ireland. And it took a huge effort by Kilkenny a couple of years ago to beat them in that semi-final. So since then they've been absolutely awesome. Maybe earlier in this season they weren't at the pitch of the game, but they certainly were trying to time it later for their run in the season. And we saw none better than that in that second half in the Munster final. But as you said, that maturity of the players. You listen to all their interviews. You listen to Grode Hegarty talk about not having any regrets, on the field and trying to enjoy games more. You listen to Keane Lynch in some of his interviews, and he's talking similar things. That maturity, you usually don't hear that in such young players. Usually it's players towards the end of their career or maybe just finished. So maybe that whole side of things that Caroline Curran has brought to it and tapped into, it's huge. And I think that it does lend itself to Limerick's dominance at the moment. And there's a correlation there, certainly. Yeah,
they do seem very comfortable in their skin in interviews, don't they, Paddy? And smart fellas. And I kind of picked up on that myself, right? You'd often hear from players, we don't listen to that kind of talk. That's something we're not. No, hang on, that's there. We're aware it's there. We've talked about it, but it kind of sounds a bit different than what we're used to, Paddy.
It is. I think it's a bit more mature than what you hear usually. I actually can never understand how teams say, this isn't being talked about and that's not being talked about. To me, what's a better motivation than saying we're going to win 2 in a row, it's never been done, we'll be the best Limerick team that ever was. I don't see that. The pressure to me is trying to win your first All-Ireland. That is just trying to get over the line and the tension, and will I ever be good enough to win an All-Ireland? I think that's real pressure. But this pressure of winning 2 All-Irelands in 3 years or 2 in a row, I don't think there's any pressure. I just think that's pure motivation. You're good enough to do it. And then you're seeing this, this thing in the distance that has never been done, and geez, we could be the men to do it. So I think they probably realise that themselves. But for me, looking at them, the way they speak, I think they've taken a lot of notes from the Dublin footballers. It seems to be that, and they seem to enjoy their life. And I suppose Sean Finn talking about maybe taking a break from training in this off season. It's very much that sort of holistic view at playing sports. But I think maybe the culture has changed too. I suppose when we played, it was all, the drinking culture was a lot bigger in Ireland. Now, as an intercounty player growing up, it's maybe to meet up and have a chit chat. It's go for walks. It's going to see the sights, the Cliffs of Moher. That's what I see a lot more of now, whereas I didn't even know where the Cliffs of Moher was when I was younger. So it's just, I think the world has changed a little bit. Certainly Ireland's culture has changed a little bit, and they obviously have gone with it.
Yeah, maybe that's, you didn't know where the Cliffs of Moher were as a Tipperary man.
I hadn't a clue. I didn't know where anything was. I was hurling, and that's it. And maybe a few pints.
That's unacceptable in your neighbouring area. Maybe you just hated Clare so much you didn't want to accept their amazing.
I hate it. Don't put fuel to that one, people.
I won't cross the border. One thing about Waterford, what's been very obvious, has been how they've blown Galway and Tipperary, two teams with a kind of similar maybe age profile and size. They've blown them away with fitness. Now, Liam Call said last year, he says, as a player, anytime I failed mainly because I wasn't fit enough. If you're physically fit, it helps mentally as well. And we spoke about that in the show, Brian. It gives you great confidence going into a game, knowing that you're flying it and you're really, really fit. Limerick are one team in the country that's not going to be an advantage over. Isn't that fair?
Yeah, but I think they have two different types of fitness as well. I think Limerick are a much stronger physical team. They have huge staying power. Probably got through their conditioning games with Paul Kinnerk, so their anaerobic systems are huge. And as I said, they're very bulky. They've big shoulders, chest, big men. You look at that half back line, they're so dominant, like a Keane Lynch, they're absolute animals. I think Waterford have probably put on a lot of lean muscle mass. You look at the type of athleticism that they have, the speed that they have. I don't think there's a team that's as fast as them out there. And they're also athletic. And I probably have some little insight into the Waterford training regime because Martin Bennett, who's with us with the club, is in as speed coach with them. And they work a lot on it, and their game is built around a lot of that speed work. And I would know that a lot of the weights they did was high intensity. Building that lean muscle mass that I just referenced. So probably a different emphasis on what they're going for, so that they can carry their weight at such speed around the field. And then they work a lot, I suppose, on the intensity in the tackle and that type of thing. And they do a lot of boxing as well, which is hugely important in terms of the anaerobic fitness as well. So it's amazing. I think they train differently, and we're going to see complete contrast in styles in the way that they do that.
Yeah, we will. And I accept that, but I think it was John Milan in the Independent was saying that Waterford needed to run at Limerick, and I was thinking that is one of Waterford's great strengths. But do you really want to run at Willie O'Donoghue or the Limerick half back line? They'll bottle you up. They're so strong, Paddy. Will you get past them, I suppose?
Well, it would be unbelievably dumb to just get a ball, turn and run straight at him. I think that would be the dumbest thing you could do with Limerick, because see, with the Munster final, if you go into a crowd of Limerick guys with arms around you, they're disciplined enough and they're very, very strong, and they will turn you over. You would hope that Waterford probably learned that lesson in the All-Ireland final last year. They got bottled up several times.
Yeah.
But you see the likes of Fagan, Jack Fagan has improved at that. He's passing the ball a little bit more. No, I think what I hope he means is more so that you get the ball, put it through a couple of hands and make him twist and turn, and then you can take him on. I think you're up to absolutely nothing if each guy who gets the ball around the middle of the field, even Barron, who's a great player, he's able to break 2 or 3 tackles, if he's going to get the ball, turn, take on the first man, and then try and take on the second man with him. I think that's a bit of a folly. I think it's half break a tackle, pop it, and then we'll try and use our pace from there around the middle. But to me, no, definitely not around the sides. If they can isolate Declan Hannon, no disrespect to him, I don't think he's a good one-on-one defender. I don't think he has the pace that the rest of those backs have. Yes, then possibly. And they are actually good at doing that. So I think, in a way, but they have to bring him out of their positions first before they do that.
Yeah, I think a big thing that they made a mistake in All-Ireland last year was that they ran at them a lot, but they ran down a lot of blind alleys. And they were such an emphasis on going for goals. Limerick knew that. They crowded out around that D and they flooded that area. And if I was critical of Waterford last year in that Ireland, was that when they broke tackles, they didn't put the ball over the bar. I think that's maybe the one shift. I think they did that again against Clare this year. They tried to run the ball too often. They were so predictable. But I thought against Galway in particular, when they broke that tackle in and around the midfield area, they started to put the ball over the bar. Jamie Barron probably started that. He scored 4 points in both games that he's played in. Callum Lyons getting up the field, and it's like Paddy says, they're popping the passes, then they're getting the runners. But the most important thing for me is they're actually taking the scores. And I think that was epitomised with maybe Jack Fagan. It was actually a score he got in the second half against Galway. down towards the Thurles Sarsfield end, and he kind of a ball broke two players ran into each other, and it kind of there was a roar from the crowd as if there's a goal on, but there wasn't really. And instead of him running down that blind alley and maybe being dispossessed, he just popped the ball over the bar. You see Gerard Hegarty do that so many times from a Limerick perspective, and that's how he ends up with 6 or 7 points, because if he's in the zone, he puts it over the bar. So I think Waterford have certainly learned from that, and where they got caught last week and it led to a goal for Tipperary was Stephen Bennett maybe was guilty of trying to run that ball in initially, and Tipperary overturned him, got a ball down the field, and they learned from it. I think so there's that fine line between trying to run it into the net and taking your chances. And I think if you go back to last year's All-Ireland, Limerick won comfortably. They won by 10 or 11 points. But Waterford, they were never going to win the game, but they certainly should have been 5 or 6 points closer, because, as I said, they ran down blind alleys.
A big part of their game, though, Paddy, and you touched on it, is the first fella has to kind of half break the tackle, for the runners to come along with him.
Yeah, no, that's huge, and most teams are trying to do that. But you would say that they've the players around the middle of the field that can do that, and so they are, and that's what I think great management is. We're trying to play this particular style, but we'll put the Barons around the middle of the field, the Calum lines around the middle of the field, so they are doing that, and they have the ability. It's just trying to do that against Limerick is, I think, is a good bit different to doing it against any other team. They had the pace on Tipperary. Tip are a good blocky team, but they're not able to use their athleticism like a Limerick are able to use it. So when they get arms on teams, they've quick feet, the Limerick backs. Kyle Hayes will wrap you up. So will Dermot Burns, and their midfielders are swarmers as well. So whether they can get away from him is another thing, and they're great with that. We all say the extra hand, playing the hand pass in hand. Yeah. So they're very good at that now. Whether the Waterford lads just throw it like everybody else throws it, then they could be onto a winner. But I do think that Liam Cahill and Mikey Beavens will have learnt an awful lot from the All-Ireland final. And I do think their motivation will be huge, and I wouldn't underestimate that either, actually. I know a lot of people out there would say, sure, it's an All-Ireland semi-final. We're all up for it. Everyone's up for that. But I do think there's always levels. Like I could go to any All-Ireland final I played and say, what was the motivation there? How raw was the feelings there? And I think you might see if they're not exhausted, you could see a Waterford team that are really at a boil on Sunday with an awful lot of aggression, or Saturday, sorry.
Yeah, so usually when we talk about Limerick, we talk about the Keane Lynch problem, we'll talk about Shane Bennett, and is he going to follow him? He won't follow him. But against Waterford, it's not really a big problem, because there's so many lads out there anyways. You'd be nearly looking at it from the other side, like Declan Hannon won't follow Jack Prendergast. That's a big problem in the form he's in, because he's in on everything. Yep. And Patrick Curran comes out. Like, is the cornerback going to follow him? Limerick kind of almost say, well, we kind of stay in our positions and, we kind of hurl that patch. What are they going to do, Brian, in that situation? There's so many Waterford lads go out.
Well, I think what Limerick always do when teams withdraw is they keep their 6 backs.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable. They're so disciplined. You see Barry Nash, they'll still play 2 in the full back, and Barry Nash will sit outside him, and then Declan Hannon still sits in the pocket, and it's amazing. You probably don't see that until you're actually at the games, and as you know, I've been lucky enough to be at a lot of them, and they're so disciplined in that. They keep 3-4 across that half back line, and their half forward line and midfield are so athletic that they're able to get back and flood that area as well as be up the other end of the field. So look, they're in that perfect storm at the moment. If I was Waterford, like Paddy touched on already, you'd be looking at trying to expose Declan Hannon. There's scores to be got there from Declan Hannon. I know Limerick at times drop back Dara Donovan or Will O'Donoghue to try and nullify that threat there, but there's definitely scores to be got there. And you see what Jason Ford was able to do in that first half. I know he was kind of moving everywhere, but that's my point. If you move a lot in that half running, which we know Waterford do, if they can get shooters there, that's a big thing. So it'll be interesting to see, will it be Stephen Bennett, will they bring Austin Gleeson out there into that position, because no matter where Aussie goes, he gets on a hell of a lot of ball. So that's somewhere definitely that Waterford can exploit Limerick.
Yeah, it's almost a numbers game then though, Paddy, because obviously the Limerick half back line will go back and help out, and that allows them to keep the couple of defenders back. But now you're not talking about Calum Lyons and Kieran Bennett who join all attacks. Even if they drop off, now maybe Liam Cahill's going to say, look lads, you're going to have a lot of room here, because we know what those lads do. They're going to be back picking up, our forwards. I want you to make a nuisance out of yourself. Or lads, recycle it back out to these and start taking long range points.
I think it will be, but I think the team that blinks first, is going to be in trouble. So I think it's a great point to look at. Like, Waterford will have to look at the first half of the Munster final and say, if we win that battle, if we can drive out with the ball, and as I say, hand pass off the half tackle, then we can bring a Declan Hannon all over the place. Then we can put an Austin Gleeson maybe playing in the middle that he can go left and right and shoot. But it's the battle. Like, you can write this up on a tactics board all you want. You can put who you want, where you want. But whoever wins that battle around the middle is going to make Limerick will have to play Waterford's game and chase them down the field if they win that battle, or else it'll be vice versa, and Limerick will be able to hold back if the Limerick guys are too strong around the middle and keep turning them over and can break tackles. Because last year in the All-Ireland, all the Limerick guys seem to be able to draw in 2 or 3 Waterford players. As Brian said, they look like they're a little more muscular this year. If they can stand up and not have to commit 2 or 3 guys to stop a Hegarty, to stop a Tom Morrissey, Keane Lynch, then they have a better chance. But if it's still a case that they're putting out fires, having to bring lads from all areas to shut them down, then they're under pressure. And I think if they're able to stand up to them, yes, Bennett is playing very well at wing back. Caleb Lyons can be very, very damaging going forward, and they could cause Limerick a serious amount of problems, and I expect they will.
Yeah, who wins that battleground? Like, it's hard to say, because the one thing, Limerick, Waterford, Kilkenny are the 3 teams nearly that are bringing that every day.
Yeah, it's huge. And I will say as well, in the Galway game, Waterford's half back line probably did exactly what I'm saying about Limerick. They sat back, and any long ball that Galway tried to strike that day, Caleb Lyons, Shane Bennett, Kieran Bennett, they mopped it up. And, it was so frustrating from a Galway perspective. So maybe Waterford had learnt a lot as well, but Limerick are so good from that perspective. They won't strike ball down just blindly.
No.
I know they'll have 2 inside. They've brilliant movement, but they always carry the ball. Like the goal about Kyle Hayes just maybe shows that when he doesn't have someone in front of him, they just carry. That's what they're absolutely excellent at, and they are able to score from distance. So it's a game of chess, as Paddy says, and it's what's going to happen. So that's what I think makes this game so intriguing. We know there's going to be a savage work rate, savage intensity. I think, in fairness to Waterford, that's exactly what they're bringing. We know Limerick and, as you said, Kilkenny always bring it. And it's and I know Liam Cal doesn't like to get caught up in the whole tactic side of things, but there is a tactical battle on here, and I don't think they can get away with one inside with just Desi Hutchinson. I think Limerick will eat that up if they play any long ball in there. I think Limerick will have their homework done big time, and they're masters at the second man in or the third man in. And as good as Desi is, it would be next to impossible to try and hurl that Limerick full backline all on his own.
Yeah, but it would be something Limerick haven't seen before, just having to deal with one in there, It
would, but if you bring back in Dan Morrissey, which I expect to come back in there, and you're talking Sean Finn, Barry Nash outside him, as good as Deshi Hutchinson is, I still think that would be next to impossible for him to try and win that ball.
Oh, it would be, but they'd have extra bodies out the field, and you'd say, let's run it, lads.
Yeah, no, if they're running it, but I'm talking about that long ball, that out ball, that Desi Hutchinson the last 2 games has been able to win. If you go back to the Clare game, he wasn't winning them, and that was highlighted on the Sunday game, where that long ball where he was breaking it down, and they're all high balls as well. He's breaking them down to him, like they're giving him terrible ball, and he's doing so well. He's so brave. But if they play that type of long ball inside, it'll be not a hope against that Limerick full back line.
No. Have Waterford improved enough, Paddy? Because the reality here is, like, we're talking up this game, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I really love both teams, and they bring the physicality, and they're 2 great teams to watch. The reality is, the last time they played, it was 30 points to 19. Like, it was a one-sided All-Ireland final. Like, have Waterford, obviously Waterford coming off 2 brilliant wins, have they closed the gap?
I think they should have closed the gap. We won't know until Saturday, obviously. And you would say the bet Galway weren't going well in the championship this year. They looked a shadow of themselves. Now, maybe Waterford made them look that way too. But so I don't think they came up against the team that really pushed them, bar in the last few minutes. Tipperary game, then they looked all through the game, they were the better team against. So this is their first proper test. I do think they've really improved. And I think one more place that's gone really well, I know they have a new goalie in Sean O'Brien, but I think his puckouts last, they were absolutely unbelievable. They were really kind of doing a low Cusack trajectory, pinging him out. No, don't mind his save, but he actually gave him a different dimension going forward. I thought he never let the Tipperary back settle, only for the last 10 minutes when the runners didn't seem to be there. So I do think they have improved. I think they're doing unbelievably well without Tadhg Burka playing as centre back. They really seem to be even running that ball a bit more and making up for his loss there. So I think they've improved. I think Desi Hutchinson has improved as a corner forward. I would have played against him, and it was all shooting from the outside and twisting left and right. But now he seems to want to take his man on. Now again, he was marked by Sean Finn in the second half of the All-Ireland last year. Got absolutely nothing out of him, like most lads don't. So a lot, as Brian said, is determined on that as well. They can have all the ball they want around the middle, but if it's coming back out as quick as against the hurling wall, then they're in serious trouble, because Limerick will punish you. So they need, in my opinion, they definitely have to have somebody in with him. And I think maybe even an Austin Gleeson, something different, some sort of X factor in there that can get him a couple of goals, because I do think they'll need it.
Yeah, Ozzy kind of floats. I'd say Ozzy just has license to maybe help him out or come out himself. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, he floats in between, and I think the rest of them seem to rotate an awful lot. Well, Jack Fagan seems to rotate in. Stephen Bennett, the odd time he does stay out a lot, but Ozzy's floating in and out. He puts in a huge shift. In fairness to him, it's probably a lot of it's unseen on telly. He's hurling tremendous. Sometimes he's not held, his performances aren't held up to such a high standard, but I think that's because how good he is. You know, I think he was hard done by for an All-Star last year as well. He's phenomenal when he's on. It'll be interesting to see will his knee be okay, because he took a heavy belt towards the end of that game when he went in to tackle Cottle Barrett. You know, the full weight of Barrett coming down on top of it, he looked in a lot of pain. So you obviously from a neutral perspective, you'd be hoping Ozzy Bennett would be on the field. But just to touch on one point that Paddy made, for me the goals are crucial. They did have goal chances in All-Ireland last year, as poor as they were. You know, within 30 seconds Jack Fagan fizzed the ball just by the post, but they had another couple of very good chances, and then a couple of half chances, maybe where they were guilty of running the ball a little bit too much. Stephen Bennett in particular.
Liam Call said after the All-Ireland final last year, he says, yeah, we needed to score 2 or 3 goals today. We said that. So maybe, you know, they were forcing that goal, you know, rather like, what will the message to them be? They still need 2 or 3 goals though, Brian. Exactly. That's the thing.
And I think you
don't outpoint Limerick.
No, and they'll look at that and say, right, if you take Austin Gleeson's goal the last day, like, that was excellent, because that probably wasn't on, and just that series of quick hand passes got them through, and Ozzy, you know, finished brilliantly to the back of the net. But like, they will need that. They'll, you know, that they're high risk, and I know I was kind of half giving out about Stephen Bennett running one in blindly, but you just have to read every situation. You know, it's like Paddy says, you're getting them back to half commit, whereas Stephen Bennett made it quite obvious from maybe 40 yards out he was going straight down the throat of him, and it just wasn't on. So yeah, to me, they need goals, but go back to my original point, they will need help. They have to have someone in there with Desi Hutchinson. I can't see them getting goals if they just have an isolated full forward. Right.
You mentioned the puck outs earlier, Paddy. Like, I've talked about this on the show before. I can't remember who it was with, right? So Limerick goes zonal, right? And like, Dublin footballers used to go zonal. They don't anymore now. Why is that? Because, you know, there's tactics you can use against that. And we mentioned this, you overload one side of the field. So if Dermot Burns, Declan Hannon and Kyle Hayes want to stay in their positions, why don't you move your 3 half forwards over onto one of them, or move your full forward out to one of them? You know, why are teams not, like, this is going on now for 3 years without anyone, and obviously the zonal stops this brilliant movement and dragging them out of position, you know, like running onto a puck out. But, you know, that day is gone now. Limerick have stopped the running onto a puck out. The Anthony Nash, you know, and Lehan running into space onto it, for example. Why are we not seeing a team blatantly, obviously focusing 3 people on Dermot Burns, breaking it down and going away with the break?
I don't know why we don't see more of it, honestly. That for me would be a huge thing, because if you put 3 on 1, or just say it ended up being 5 on 2, you're probably guaranteeing that you'll probably win that ball. Even if you don't win it, you'll probably have them tackled or turned backwards. So I don't get it. I do think the team that did it best this year and for the last few years was Cork in I think it was the semi-final. They played them in this year in the Munster semi-final. And I think the thing that works against a team like Limerick, a team like Kilkenny, when they had that great half backline, is variety. If they know what's coming, they have the skills, they have the power, and they have the intelligence to know what to do. And that's high ball. And I said, you know, if you let them Limerick lads pin their earbacks and attack a high ball, you're in trouble. Tipperary did that. They got joy in the first half. Maybe the worst thing that happened, because they kept doing it the second half, and Limerick just kept mopping it up. And I don't think it's going to happen again where they let those soft goals through this year. So variety to the full back line, to the midfield, you know, crossing players, balls out to the side. It doesn't have to be a perfect ball out, but it has to be one that the Limerick lads cannot attack, you know, free rein. And I do think Sean O'Brien was brilliant at him the last day. He popped him into good areas. And I think that's the thing. It's not about being 100% accurate. It's about putting it into a blade of grass that the Limerick guy isn't waiting for, and that your Waterford attackers know that it's going into. So be it Barron, be it Peter Hogan, be it Lyons even in the half-back line, as long as he's putting it to an advantageous area that isn't a big high raking clearance, I think they have a chance. But the blueprint is there, I think. Tipped on a little bit, but Cork, I think, did the most and probably don't have the best high ball winners. So I think they have to look at that.
You're at the matches, Brian. Any evidence teams are trying to overload on one side where Limerick it'll end up making Limerick look very foolish. You're going with a 3-on-1 while two lads stand completely free, doing nothing, standing in a zone. It will make a zone. Like, there has to be a tactic against the zonal. No,
you're 1000% right. It's the only way to attack that zonal. The one thing obviously Limerick do as well is that they maybe offer up the short puckouts, and they love nothing more than turning those over because they're absolutely excellent. I don't think there's a team. Maybe Kilkenny is as good as turning over those balls, whether they're full back line or half back line, and punishing teams. So Waterford, it'd be a high risk game to play a lot of short puckouts either. I think the word Paddy used was variety. We talked about this before All-Ireland last year as well. They will need to win a high ball. Jack Fagan needs to get up there. Austin Gleeson needs to get up there because they're capable of doing it. And I think it takes big players like that to try and break down this Limerick team, or any dominant team in those situations. But they will need variety, as Paddy has said. And that overload is crucial, Willie. And as you're right, I think Limerick. Just talking about Limerick for a second. Paul Kinnerk's influence, his knowledge of football, being a predominantly a football man initially, it's huge. It's not to be underestimated. I think hurling, it's slowly getting there in terms of looking at different systems of play. I know it can be overdone at times, and we're not going to go into that right now, but there is other avenues that people need to look at. The one thing, and the thing with puck out strategies as well, they're fine to a point. They usually go out the window in the last 10 minutes of any game. Like that high intensity, that running, and that's where I talk about you need someone to win a ball. You need someone to stand up and be a man, and whether it's win it clean or break it down to numbers. And
because if they start overloading, Limerick will probably figure that out.
Exactly.
So it comes back to who's going to win.
Who's going to win, and that's why people would say, you'd be foolish to lump every ball long. I'm not saying that, but there will come a point in big games, All-Ireland semi-finals, finals, whatever, where someone has to win ball, hard ball.
Yeah, no, it definitely will. Any matchups, lads? Prunty will take up Flanagan or Gillan. I think he marked. Did he mark Gillan last year, Paddy, in the All-Ireland final?
Yeah, in the Munster final.
In the Munster final.
Yeah, I think he did okay in the Munster final. Yeah, in the All-Ireland final, then I'm not sure who he marked in the All-Ireland final.
It was on him, yeah.
I think it was Gillan both days. It was Gillan both days, yeah.
But I don't know this year. Is Gillan the danger this year? Is Flanagan the danger this year? Are the other two suited to Mark and Flanagan then?
Well, one's not.
Two cornerbacks that are in there. Yeah, exactly. So I think it could be a change around. I think they'll keep Prunty in the middle himself this time. He's playing unbelievably well. I know Gillan is a danger, but to me, Seamus Flanagan, if he gets going, it can break through these tackles at a cornerback. So I don't know, is that the wisest decision?
See, I think last year going into All-Ireland, we weren't sure if Seamus Flanagan was going to start or not. There was still that, question marks around it. He only started, I think, the All-Ireland semi-final.
Played well in the semi,
yeah. And then he got his start again for the final. We know Seamus Flanagan's going to be starting, and I think going into that final, they probably said, look, Aaron Gillan has been the man for Limerick so far. Prunty, you pick him up. So I think Paddy's right. I think Seamus Flanagan, I think Conor Prunty will pick up Seamus Flanagan, and they're going to have to look at one of the two cornerbacks.
You're looking at Kenny, McNulty or Gleeson coming back in.
Yeah.
There's a mismatch there with Gillan in the air, right?
Certainly. But we assume, and it'd be foolish, I think, of Limerick even at this stage, that Gillan is starting. I think it's a given that he is going to be.
I think he will. He will. On the other side then, Dan Morris will probably pick up Austin Gleeson. But Gleeson will only line up there, I suppose, Paddy. And then the question is, who's following who and who? Finn will pick up Hutchinson. That would be fairly obvious as well. But where they go? That's the question. You couldn't see Dan Morrissey following Gleeson all over the place.
No, they won't follow him all over the place. And the funny thing in the All-Ireland last year was, I think Hutchinson played to his normal corner, and I think it was Nash happened to be there, and he picked him up starting off, but he was doing a bit of damage early on. They probably didn't get the scores out of it, but it was the one time you could really see exposure in the Limerick full back line in that first half. But Sean Finn took him in the second half and just didn't give him a sniff of the ball. So I think it'll be, I know you want to keep your position, and Kilkenny used to do it, and actually, to be fair to Liam Sheedy, I used to never be detailed really. Only maybe John Milan used to be detailed to man mark somebody.
Thanks, buddy.
And it kind of, No, I wanted to mark you myself. but like it's kind of a sign of strength, I think, from management saying, no, you'll sit in your position, because we believe if we line out 15 players in their position, that the other team won't be able to go with us. And I have great confidence in you marking any man. So I think that's the way they look at it. But to me, it could be overconfident here. Like if I'm looking at Waterford, I'm saying if I stop good ball into Hutchinson, if I have a guy with him who stops him running riot, then I think they won't have the amount of ball winners inside to win this match. So look, if I was John Kiley, I'd be trying to snuff him out straight away. I think the other Waterford guys, the Bennetts, the obviously Austin Gleesons, Fagans, they'll drift into different positions and be picked up accordingly in those positions. But I don't actually think there'll be much man marking towards the rest of it.
Yeah, so Finn will pick up Hutchison and Barry Nash will end up being the sweeper, and Dan Morrissey will have to make his decision what he's doing. You could end up two versus one if they don't, whenever Ozzy goes out. What about the big question? Caleb Lyons versus Garrod Hegarty. That was a big one before the All-Ireland final. He'd done well on him in the Munster final. You know, ran out of gas, I suppose, against Hegarty in the All-Ireland final. Hegarty got a lot of his scores towards maybe three anyways, towards the end. Brian, I think Caleb Lyons has come on a lot this year. You've Kieran Bennett marking Tom Morrissey. This is always the big question. You know, do you stay going with them? I think they will. And I think they'll just try to follow them.
I think they'll line up exactly the way they are. They're going to have to put themselves in the front foot, and as you say, Caleb Lyons had a brilliant season last year, but he's even better this year. He's offering a huge amount going forward, but he's defending much better as well. But it's nullifying Garrod Hegarty is the big thing. Yeah, as you said, he got 7 points in All-Ireland. Tom Morrissey had a big part to play in that. He must have assisted him for 3 or 4 points, just lovely little pop hand passes. So it was maybe the influence of Tom Morrissey winning the primary possession and the movement of Garrod Hegarty, where Callum Lyons is probably his weakest part of his game, because he's such a gung-ho hurler going down the field. It's a brilliant attacking weapon, but there is scores to be got off him. You've seen that with Tipperary last week. They put Noel McGrath on him, hoping that he'd be able to exploit that side of it, that he might be able to pick up points from distance. Noel got a lot of shots off. He was maybe shooting just outside. He's not just outside of range, but there were low percentage shots. Sorry, he was hitting them off his own half back line. But still, if you look at the amount of possession he got, it was huge. And like Noel wouldn't have the engine. That's no offence to him. He's a lot of other things, but he wouldn't have the engine maybe that Garrod Hegarty has. So it's a different dynamic. So it is interesting. Garrod Hegarty probably hasn't been at his best this year. He did a brilliant second half against Tipperary, much more influential in that game, but we haven't probably seen him hit the heights of what he was at last year. So he'll probably be burning to try and get a big performance out of him. So it's a big area to feel that Waterford have to at least break even in.
Yeah, no, exactly. Finally, lads, on this one, the bench advantage. Waterford have Montgomery, they've young Kiley, who I didn't know much about, but he looked fairly good. I don't know, is he highly rated young fella coming off to under 20s?
Very good with under 20s against Tipperary in particular.
Right.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Kevin Moran, and you've one of the fives, that's a strong
Shane
bench,
fives,
lads. Shane fives, that's a strong bench. Limerick obviously will have Graham Mulcahy, who won't start, Pat Ryan, David Reedy, Conor Boylan. I think taking Shane Dowling out of that kind of bench, is the Limerick bench looking as scary as other years, Paddy?
I still think it's very, very good, to be honest with you. They have a couple of... I think they put more guys into their league panels than anybody did. And I just think they haven't established themselves yet. Coughlin, I think it's Coughlin as a wing back.
Yeah,
they have an awful lot to actually work with. I think Pat Ryan is somebody in another county, he gets so much more game time. He's such speed. He was on those under 21 teams as a midfielder. He's a brilliant player, and for the last 10 minutes he'd be an absolute nightmare. Then you have on the bench, you might have a Richie English now. Probably not Morrissey, I don't think anymore, but you have a Richie English if they're in trouble at the back. So I do think they're a tough prospect, and they're fast players to bring on as well. So maybe not as much of an advantage as they had before. With Flanagan coming on, I always thought he should be starting with him coming on. That was a huge thing to look at coming in off the bench. And then, of course, with Gillan and Morrissey changed it the last day. But I think at this stage they have to get their best guys on the field, and it does weaken their bench a little bit. But I think if it was me, I'd have a Pat Ryan coming on. He made a big difference in 2017, and I don't understand how he doesn't get a little bit more game time.
Yeah, he's always the last one to come on, isn't he, Brian? And he always looks imagine having to mark that man when he comes on. It's a nightmare. He'd make you tired just looking at the way, and he takes you on every time when you're getting tired. It's a strange one. He's always really late in the day. We may get predictions here, lads. Brian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm probably still going to go with Limerick, being honest. I just think they've too much for this particular Waterford team. I think, we've talked about a lot of the areas where I think Waterford will come up short against this Limerick team. So I just think, as I said, they're not burdened with this expectation that they have to win this All-Ireland either. And I just think they have too much firepower all over the field.
Yeah. Paddy?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. I'm getting every prediction wrong, so Waterford people hope I'm wrong again this time. But look, I think the Limerick team, you saw when they stepped it up to real All-Ireland level intensity last day against Tipperary, that, I don't think any team lived with them. Certainly over the last few years, no team would have lived with that. So I would say Limerick, and add into that with 10 minutes to go, if it's a close game, it's very hard to see Waterford having the energy and the legs to run that ball up and down the field, and that is their game plan. So look, all that together, you'd have to go with Limerick.
Yeah, you'd nearly be saying to Waterford, don't be ahead at half time. Imagine the pressure they'd feel. Oh, here's the comeback here. They nearly need to time themselves and almost them catch Limerick towards the end, or something like. I'm the same. It's hard to, you couldn't see past Limerick, lads, really. But I do think on Waterford's point, when the Burka, Porrick, Matany and Irla Daly all come back into that starting team, I do think there's an All-Ireland Waterford. Would you boys agree with that? Oh, I don't know what's going to have to happen in Limerick.
Yeah, the thing with that is, if Liam Cal is still around, Liam Cal going to be with Tipperary, so there's a lot of shaking and moving there still to be done. But you're dead right. You add them in with the way Liam Cal has them playing, they'd be formidable. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. Right, we'll leave it there and we'll come back and look at the other semi-final. The other big one this weekend is obviously Kilkenny and Cork. Some people would argue it's a bigger game considering the tradition involved. Kieran Kingston said Kilkenny or Kilkenny. Croke Park is their home, really, Brian. And I thought it was a funny one. We always use that, as a kind of an advantage to Dublin. But let's be honest about it. We'll take the league. Dublin play home league games, which is 3 games. Kilkenny play all their games practically in Croke Park in the Championship. There was a map going around, a historical map of how many times each county in the whole country played in Croke Park, and Kilkenny had played there 233 times, Cork 76 times. Like, obviously that's historically, but playing in Croke Park, I presume, would be an advantage, slight advantage for Kilkenny with their familiarity with their surroundings.
It would, and I suppose, look, from a Munster perspective, and Paddy will obviously know about this, there's no Munster Championship ever played in Croke Park. To play in Croke Park, you have to be in the latter end of the All-Ireland series, quarter-final, semi-final, whatever final. So usually when they get there, they never fear playing there. So it's not really a factor. I wonder, is there a touch of Razzie Erasmus in this from Kieran Kingston? You know what I mean? Just trying to shake things up a little bit and maybe talk about the advantage that Kilkenny have. Look, we all know, where else do you want to play an All-Ireland semi-final? You hardly, even the tip man Paddy won't even say you want to play it down in Thurles. Let's be honest, if you want to play in big games, we all know they're in Croke Park. So I don't see that. I know what you're saying. I know they've played there more often, and I know this particular team have played a lot of matches, particularly since COVID's come in there, but it's not a huge advantage either.
But maybe not a huge advantage, but you look now, I was looking at since the last time they played 2 years ago, and Kilkenny won it handy. Like, Cork have Patrick Collins, Robert Downey, Ger Millerick, Conor Cahalane and Jack O'Connor. Like, they wouldn't have played in an All-Ireland semi-final. Like, the Kilkenny new players, Tommy Walsh, Martin Keoghan, Richie Reid, Owen Cody, they've played there loads of times since. What were you like when you were coming up, your first time or two? Because the funny thing about it is, Paddy, like, you're coming up to play in Croke Park, and it's the biggest game of your year, all year. It's like all on this, and you might not play there for another year then after that. Like, how did you get the whole dynamic of the surroundings kind of tied down?
Well, I remember playing my first game as a minor. I thought I was after winning the lottery, I'd only been up there a handful of times, even watching matches. Tip weren't going that well at the time, but it can be overwhelming for some players. I think it's the type of person you are if you kind of rise to that occasion, or even the likes of if you make the arena out to be more than it is. I remember playing All-Ireland finals, and I'd have a good look around, I'd have a look in and just try and get concentrated on the match. And I know we played actually, it's probably a good example is playing with Borsley in the club final. Most of our players hadn't played in Croke Park. Like, the vast majority of players hadn't. Maybe 4 or 5 had played in Croke Park at the most. And so we tried to have a bit of fun with it. We tried to have a good laugh about it, and kind of play up the fact that we hadn't played there before, and we're having a good laugh about it, even in the dressing room beforehand. And look, we didn't win the match, but we started extremely well, and I suppose that would show that we weren't overawed by it. And I think that's what it's about. It's about being confident about having fun about it and relishing. And I think that's it. You have to relish where you are. And the way Cork have played, I think, over the last couple of games has been with a fair swagger now. We're thinking back at Cork teams like coming up the field. You have Jack O'Connor taking his man on, Jeremy Miller being pretty tough. Downey going well at the full back line. Tim O'Mahony obviously just seems to be running wherever he wants on the field, and I wouldn't be overly worried about that. It's a nice thing to throw out by Kieran Kingston, but I don't think it's going to be any huge advantage. But of course, the Kilkenny lads are playing there since they're playing the halftime shows under 12, I'd say, so they have a slight advantage. But I think if you're mentally strong enough, and that means you're a good enough player, I think it won't be much of a bother.
The reason it's a little bit of a strange thing for Kingston to come out with is that Cork have a terrible record of late in Croke Park. They have won one semi-final from their last 7. So if that's your record at Croke Park and you're putting it out there, it's a home advantage. Now, I know he's not going to be saying that in the dressing room, but at the same time, you know, like Cork, you hear Paul Murphy on the show here, Brian, like it's gas listening to him. The amount of times he's mentioned, like, Cork's cockiness, and you don't want to let them ahead of you because, they'll grow. And, should a Cork manager not be tapping into that rather than...
Yeah, it's a head scratcher, really, because it's not. It's almost like getting your excuses in early. So it's a strange one, and it's not a factor that I don't think too many people or pundits or media or former players would have actually an issue with coming into this game. Like, it is what it is, and as Paddy said, if you need that bit of bowliness in you almost, that these occasions are not going to overawe you. Like, I'm sure the first time you played there, Wooly, as well, at minor or whatever, like I remember playing there with schools and playing there with minor as well, like maybe I was younger and cockier, but you were loving it. It's where you dreamed of playing, and that's my same thing for the Cork crowd. And you remember, there's only going to be 24,000 at it as well. It's not like it's going to be an 80,000 sellout occasion. So it's 24,000. Like, it's a good crowd, and we're delighted to have 24,000. Probably should be more, but that's another debate. But it's not going to be a crowd that's going to have a huge effect in terms of the nerves or an overawing kind of occasion for the players.
Yeah, maybe not. Brendan Cummins was talking about this, Paddy, and he says, he's talking about Cork. He says, they've something bubbling and they're winning because they're angry and they're fighting on their backs. I don't know. I'm obviously not a pundit here. I'm asking you the questions, but they don't look an angry team to me. Like Kilkenny looks like an angry team, or Waterford, you could say, is an angry team, the way they hunt in packs and everything. Cork look angry to you?
No, they look more of a stylish outfit still. Now, I do think there's a bit more of a backbone to them. In all fairness, now, I'd have to say I like the likes of Jeremy Miller. I think Conor Cahalane is a good addition. I didn't know why he was dropped, to be honest, because I think he gives that honesty of effort. Jack O'Connor, as I referenced already, as a corner back, he does the one thing we don't want and most corner forwards don't do. He gets the ball, he turns and he runs directly at your shoulder and uses what he actually has. Sean O'Donoghue for me is already a really, really good corner back, and Tim O'Mahony has started to play a lot better. Like, he was very, very up and down for 3 or 4 years when he started. So I do think they have a bit more of a backbone. I wouldn't say like they're fighting on their backs and angry, because the type of game they play, they spread the play. They move the ball, and it doesn't really lend itself to bunching and fighting and winning rucks. But they'll have to do that on Sunday. That's the only thing, because this game, while they'll be trying to spread it out, Kilkenny will be trying to really congest it and make it into a dog battle, a dog fight. But look, I think they are fighting harder. I think that their attackers are a lot better at coming back the field. But it's still all to be proven, because the last 2 teams they played were Dublin and Clare. Good teams, but certainly not at the very, very top of what they'll be playing with the likes of Kilkenny on Sunday.
Well, the analysis you gave for the last match made perfect sense. Who's going to win that battle in the middle of the field to earn the right to play, right? So that makes sense, because it's the same in Gaelic football, right? And who's going to win that battle? How can Cork win that middle third battle? Who's their combative players? Mark Coleman, Tim O'Mahony, Dara Fitzgibbon, Luke Meade, Robbie O'Flynn, Conor Cahalane, Seamus Harnedy. Can those players, who I see all kind of lovely hurlers, can they win that battle against Kilkenny, who are the most consistent in the business at it, Brian?
I think they're better set up to do it this year than ever, but can they win it? It's open to interpretation for Sunday, but I would struggle to see it as well. I think their half-forward line is a lot stronger. Robbie Flynn brings a lot a lot of energy there. He works really hard. We know Seamus Harnedy does that. He's never been afraid of high ball or hard ball, and Conor Catalan offers something completely different. Cork have a lot of Kitog hurlers as well. Like I think it's 6 to have on the team, and that's huge. And Limerick loves it, the rough and tumble. And Tim O'Mahony, as Paddy says, really added a lot to his game going forward. Probably he's a lot more settled since he's back playing wing back. But then you've beautiful ball players like Darragh Fitzgibbon and Mark Coleman. Like Cork all year, since the very start of the year, their game plan has been about moving the ball through the lines, lovely intricate passing, short puck outs, all those sort of things. Basically a setup that they're going to try and bypass the big strong physical teams like Limerick and like Kilkenny. I can't see how it can work, being honest. It goes back to what I said earlier. If they don't win the fight, primarily, I don't think they can run them around the field. I've said this before in the show, you can't underestimate Kilkenny's athleticism. It's huge. It always is. And particularly at the moment, they've a lot of athletic players, and they've a lot of really athletic players to come into the game as well. So they won't run out of steam. So when you talk about legs, probably with the exception of Jack O'Connor, his particular pace, I think a lot of the rest of that Cork team, Kilkenny will be able to stay with them, and their doggedness will really, really trouble this Cork team. Cork hit almost everything short, as much as possible, and Kilkenny hunting packs. We've seen something totally different from Kilkenny against Wexford in particular, where they gave up the short puck outs. And they didn't really engage them till maybe 45-50 metres out. Cork are probably better at it than Wexford in terms of running that ball through the lines, but will they meet that, or have they met that level of aggression and intensity that the Kilkenny team, every one of them, will bring? And if they don't, they're getting the curly finger. They're gone. It's as simple. It doesn't matter who they are. And look, TJ Reid, he's the one that sets the tone. That he's just phenomenal at it. And the rest of it, you've seen the last day. Owen Cody gone 1-5 in the previous game. Leicester final, didn't perform. Good luck. Do you know what I mean? And it's just it's phenomenal, their work rate. So to go back to your original point, can I see them winning this middle third battle? I can't.
Yeah, that's the thing. The only time I saw Cork winning that battle was the day down in the Gaelic grounds against Limerick, the year they beat them in the Munster League, Paddy. And I'm nearly sure that was 2019, the year they went up to Kilkenny and rolled over for them. Do you know? So I don't know. I trust exactly what Kilkenny are going to bring, and I don't trust Cork yet.
It's fair, and I didn't trust them last week. I was talking about Dublin winning, and to be fair to Cork, they had so much more than they had, and they probably made it a lot easier work at Dublin than Kilkenny did. That was a funny thing as well. Kilkenny always looked like winning it, but it was tighter than the Cork. Cork were way ahead of Dublin last week. You see, it's very hard for us. This is a new Cork team, and this was a very, very good under-21 team, but they lost the All-Ireland and kind of battling All-Ireland against Tipperary, and that was 1-1 against the Head. So if they had won that, would these be glittering players that everybody has been waiting for to come on the scene? So they did that couple of point loss. So they could be the real deal. They're so new for us that we're trying to struggle and rack our brains, say, can they actually physically have what Kilkenny aren't able for? And at the minute, you'd have to say probably no. There's one other area I'd be concerned about, and he actually did very well. Robert Downey did well last week for the amount of ball that Hayes won in the full forward line for Dublin, right? But he won, to me, if a Kilkenny forward, if an Owen Cody wins that ball, if TJ Reid wins that amount of ball, there's goals going in. There's no doubt in my mind. How many times did Hayes get the ball right or left of the 14 and just couldn't get around Downey?
Yeah.
And fair play to him on that day. But that won't happen again. So I'm wondering how much ball is going to be won in there, and will there be huge trouble that we're not seeing from the last couple of games? We haven't seen that will be present on Sunday.
That's the thing. Hayes looked clueless really of what to do when he did get the ball. It's almost like he wanted somebody to come and help him and take the ball off him. From a positive from Cork, Kieran Kingston said there's no secret that this group have been criticised over the last number of years for defending and for not goal scoring. So you look at their last two games, no goal from play conceded in the last two games, only a Tony Kelly penalty and 5 goals scored. So I don't know, you can't think, are you being too harsh on Cork? Are we giving them a chance?
Yeah, I think probably what sets them apart this year and last year is their ability to score goals. Like, they got 14 goals in the league. They certainly have much more emphasis on it. Every time they break that half forward line, they're trying to run it. Shane Kingston, Jack O'Connor said they're just putting the head down and going. And if they can get the ball to the man in the right position, the likes of Hoggy, in that, you know, there's certainly goals there. And look, the last day against Kilkenny, like, Hoggy put on a master.
Yeah, he destroyed Hugh Lawler, didn't he?
Destroyed.
Do you remember
him,
the one he
like,
caught out over his head?
Yeah, and even the one that in the first half where he took the big shoulder and hit it off his knees. Like, look, we know a good Hoggy.
He won't score that this time though. Like, I mean, Hoggy's
no,
not.
Even Hugh Lawler's turned into a serious full-back at the moment. You know, he was probably a little bit inexperienced back then. But look, it goes back to Waterford. I think Cork have to score goals. There's no doubt about it. They're just going to have to rattle 2 or 3 and hope, as they can say, they can shut out Kilkenny down the other end. And Robert Downey has been a big plus at full-back, but as Paddy says, he's going to have to maybe limit the amount of possession that those Kilkenny forwards get, because if they get it, there's only one outcome. And the last game I thought against Dublin, it was like, yes, Cork were so far in front, they kept them at arm's length. It was a boring game to watch. You know, from a neutral perspective, you know, if you were Cork, you were happy. They were always doing enough and kept them at that 7-8 points until Dublin made a late burst. But it never looked like Dublin were going to actually really close it in, and they didn't seem to have that belief that they could do it either. So if Cork played the same game, which I don't think they will, you know, there's only going to be one outcome there.
The Conor Brown, I'd say he won't be back. He did a right tear on his hamstring. Does Killian Buckley come in for him, or does like I was thinking Killian Buckley might play midfield, because their midfielders are taken off. Richie Reid and Richie Leahy seem to be taken off first in every game. Paddy, like, if Cork are going to focus in on an area where they could potentially, you know, have a strength, Fitzgibbon needs to spark big time, and Luke Meade, you know, is a you don't take Luke Meade off, you know, so there definitely be an advantage for Cork there.
There certainly is, but what I always say about the middle of the field, and it's like talking about man marking Jimmy Barron last week, like, I just think that's a really dangerous area. Around the middle, it's your 8 against their 8. I don't think it's one singular. Now, I do take the point, if your 2 midfielders aren't getting on the ball, then they're kind of, you know, they're dead wood on your team, so you do bring them off. But I don't know, are they going to look at it like that? I do think they'll probably have judged it on training, because they had the couple of weeks break, because Cody isn't going to change his belief system. It'll be whoever's sharpest in training, whoever's given the most, whoever's working the hardest will be midfield. I think Carey came on and showed as much as what a guy could have come on and hurled for 35 minutes the last day. So he might want his pace and his ability to stay with the Cork backs.
Cahalane,
if you think
maybe,
Killian Buckley, if you think of Killian Buckley, you know, working through my head, will he stay with Robbie O'Flynn? Like, Robbie O'Flynn is performing very well. I thought very inconsistent for his first couple of years in the panel. Now he's found that consistency along with Tim O'Mahony. So I think they could go that sort of a route where they have a hardy, good marker, a lad that can drive forward. And but it will be interesting to see. And the more we talk about it, like, you know, Dublin didn't have much more of a convincing win against, Kilkenny against Dublin, and Wexford match against, you know, Wexford weren't performing great this year and pushed Kilkenny all the way as well. So it's probably going to be closer than we think. I just think this Cork team haven't played at this intensity yet. So that's what's leaving the doubt in my mind.
Yeah, you're leaning towards TJ going in on Downey, that he did give Hayes a lot of ball. Now, he wrapped him up fairly well, but he wouldn't wrap TJ up that kind of. I presume Mellerick will pick him up if he's in the half back line. Or in the half forward line, rather.
Yeah, no, I'd expect that he will go in for it. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Adrian Mullen, because the last day they played in midfield, you know, because they looked at that Dublin midfielders and they said, look, there's a lot of shooting opportunities there, so get Mullen on the ball. And he got 2 or 3 points, but he 2 or 3 really poor wides as well, so he got a lot of shots off.
He played in midfield that day, did he? I didn't think he did.
Yeah, so he was midfield and kind of filtering in and out between centre forward and midfield, but predominantly midfield. So, you know, Cody's not, you know, we sometimes, you know, maybe say he's not tactically astute, but of course he is. You know, he always tries to get his forward players or his big players in that position where he thinks he might maximise them. So it'll be interesting what he does with Adrian Mullen there. You know, he could even put him centre forward if he's looking at that. Mark Coleman sitting back into the pocket. Yeah. He could look at Mullen, look at the amount of shooting opportunities he could get there, straight down the centre. So it's, you know, there's that variety in Kilkenny, which I think they've always had under Cody. They name 6 forwards, but you just don't know where they're going to be playing. And it'll be interesting to see, will Owen Cody be playing? You know, like he as I said,
come on now.
No, but that's Cody. You know,
he has to be starting.
I personally, of course I'd be starting him. He's excellent, but the way he looks at it is he didn't really perform in the Leinster final, and it's always, if the next guy puts up his hand, which James Bergen did, and he came in, scored 2 points, looked really lively, that's Cody. That's what he's done for the last 20, 21 years, 22
he
years.
did it at Colin Fennelly last year, didn't he?
Exactly. So he's not afraid to make those hard calls. That's the one thing that sets him apart. And like I'd agree with Paddy. I think Michael Carey comes into that half back line as well. Like he showed that one clip of him passing out the Dublin player, the pace of him.
I forgot about him actually. Mentioning Killian Buckley.
Yeah, do you know, like you could imagine him picking up the likes of Conor Catlin or Robert Downey, definitely.
Yeah. Like Cody, obviously the joke is that he doesn't do tactics, and maybe he wasn't big into huge game plans, Paddy, but you've always commented what he's very good at is identifying someone to put Shefflin on, or Comerford on, or Eddie Brennan on, whereas like Brian's saying this weekend, like he'll have somewhere for TJ and Mullen and these fellas.
He will definitely, and I was just thinking there, he'd love to have a Colin Fennelly, although we haven't mentioned him all year really. They've done fine without him. Like, he would be made for Robert Downey this weekend, because if you give him the ball and let him run at you, he goes straight by you. But look, however, that's not the case. I mightn't, I don't know, will Reid go in on top of Downey, because TJ Reid probably getting the ball on the edge and running past you probably isn't his best way of getting a goal. He's more off the break, and he always reads it so well. So maybe, even on Cody, if he does get the start, as unbelievable as it sounds, I don't know, will he go at him, because he seemed against Wexford very strong in around the square, and that he's able to shrug off a man, and I think Robert Downey is that, but there will be a mismatch of sorts at some stage, and that's what, and in fairness to Kilkenny, that's what they do. There's inexperience in the Cork full back line. I expect, a couple of the big hitters to be in there for at least a portion of the day.
We were talking on Monday about Jack O'Connor and how the crowd love him and everything now, but like, he's very predictable, and he ends up nearly all the time coming in the end line with no angle to shoot at. You'd imagine Kilkenny will be talking about this the whole time. Like, I mean, is he a danger running in that end line? What does he need to do there, Brian? Does he need to cut in the field and come on his other side? Like, he tried to smash a ball overhead from the end line.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, it's all right. The crowd get up on their feet, and like, if he does that a few times, they go, "Oh God, this lad's no end prod." He has scored a couple of goals, but I think Kilkenny will defend that. I don't think that would scare Kilkenny all that much.
No, and they'll get back in numbers as well. Like, they're brilliant at manning that square and just making sure that they don't get in there. And another thing, there's no doubt about it, he'll be folded up. Like, no, but seriously, like, the last day Leach in, he's caused, like, a couple of games ago, he's caused Kilkenny a lot of problems, folded up in the first half. And like, Jackie Turtle wasn't afraid to do with Shane McCallan either. I'm not saying it's dirty, and people said, what are you saying it is? I'm saying they do what needs to take to win. Do you know what I mean? If Jack O'Connor's going to be buzzing around that place and he leaves himself wide open, he's going to be put a stop to.
So he'll go around Tommy Walsh on the outside, come in the lane line, and Pádraig Walsh will come across, and he'll be stuck into Hill 16.
Exactly, that's my point. And like, he's doing exactly what any good full back line or any good half back line are going to do. That's the edge. That's why I talked about Gerard Hegarty a couple of shows ago. he hits late and hits hard, and like, yes, it, like, he knows exactly what he's doing, but you've got to do these things if you want to win. So like, I think that same sort of thing. Jack O'Connor will know he's in a game. He won't be skip around lads like that. If he does it once, great. If we go back and reference that game 2 years ago, Cork really troubled Kilkenny in that first half. Alan Cadigan caused a lot of trouble as well. He got a goal. Their pace was unbelievable. A half-time was set up. God, they're really troubling Kilkenny. And Kilkenny came out and made it into a battle in the second half, and Cork had no answer. So it could be something similar this weekend. Yeah.
What do you take of the Jack O'Connor point, Paddy?
Well, I think it's a point well made, in terms of he gets the ball, he likes to turn around to his left and run at you on the outside. And the reason he wants to go on the outside is because there's space out there, and he knows if it's a foot race, he's going to beat you. If I was him, which I'm not, and he's a bit older now, but taking a couple of scores, cutting back in and taking a couple of scores on your right side is probably a good idea there, because then they can't assume where you're going. But if you're a head down player all the time, as Brian was saying, you run down the inside, and if I'm the centre back or the wing back, I'm coming across, and I'm hoping that you've so much blinkers on, you don't even see me coming. And if you can get a legal hit, if you can get one that isn't a free, you'll plant him hard as you can, which is fine. But there'll no back be afraid to take a yellow card if you can hit him a good shot. And but the other thing is, will we see Paddy Deegan on him in there? There's a couple more factors. Number one, will we see Paddy Deegan put over on him? I personally probably would. I think Hugh Lawler will be on Hoggy. And the other thing, I'd be wondering, is that ball going to go into Jack O'Connor? Not to disrespect him, but I think a ground ball or a ball this high very, very good at. But I'd like to see it now. If the Cork backs midfield are forced, by this intensity, the Kilkenny guys to hit it over their shoulder, hit it under pressure, then I think, the likes of a Jack O'Connor is going to have a really long day at the office.
Yeah. Has Hoggy a new role, Brian, with Jack O'Connor kind of getting a lot of those balls into that space? I remember Hoggy, even I interviewed him, he told me he likes to break out to the left-hand side, turn around and put it over his shoulder. But that's kind of where Jack O'Connor is. Is he being starved of a little bit of ball to supply Jack O'Connor a little bit?
Yeah, he probably is, being honest. And again, it goes back to the change in emphasis in Cork further out the field. They're carrying so much more ball. They're pop hand passing, and like what little ball is going in, it's probably Jack O'Connor's movement is getting him onto those balls that are being struck in. And Patrick Horgan, we probably haven't seen him at the top of his game that we've seen the last couple of years either. So he's not getting on near as much ball. Paddy's the cornerback, he probably knows more about it than me, but I'd be looking at maybe Paddy Deegan actually going on Shane Kingston in terms of physicality wise, and Tommy Walsh coming over and Jack O'Connor. But look, Paddy's looking at it the other way in the mismatch, so it's again, it's interesting to see what way Kilkenny will look at that, or will Kilkenny do what they always do and just whoever comes in on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's that's the thing with Kenny, and they're seeing if they're not good enough to mark whoever comes in them, it's just not good enough. The only time they've ever really got matchups is when the likes of Tipperary in the replays, where they've learned from replays that they said, right, hold on a second, now they've burnt us the last day, we need to get our matchups right.
Yeah.
Other than that, they just seem to hurl exactly what's in front of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, how will Hoggy kind of fancy it against Hugh Lawler after the last day? Paddy, or Shane Kingston comes out the field and it'll be just 2-on-2 in there. Like, would you be leaving Deegan in there then for the experience and let Tommy Walsh go out? You're obviously saying that.
I personally think Jack O'Connor is more of a danger than Kingston. I think Kingston is a great finisher, don't get me wrong. I think he's an excellent finisher and you need those as well, but I don't think he's a very good ball winner, and I think he takes a lot of wrong options. He runs when he shouldn't, he shoots on the side sometimes when he shouldn't, comes off a lot of the time, but I think on the whole he's not as dangerous as Jack O'Connor. When Jack O'Connor gets his goal in his mind, he's a more consistent touch. He's harder. If the ball is coming in, winnable at all, and the man is on his back, he's not bad to win it either. So to me, I try and eliminate that with Paddy Deegan straight away, and I think Tommy Walsh would do a pretty stand-up job of stopping Kingston on primary balls. He might be able to stop him if it's a hand pass over the head, but not any cornerback can at that stage. So I think that's the way to go. And with Hoggy, I don't think it's any harm. He's getting less ball. I think he's a great player, obviously. I marked him, and he's a fantastic player. But that's what was wrong with Cork, in my opinion. We were focusing on Horgan. He's getting a couple of balls. He's popping them over the bar. You're focusing on Lehane. He's getting a couple of balls. He's going on his own. He's popping them over the bar. To me, there was no joined up thinking. There was no let's assist, let's break a tackle, get a ball through for a goal. Alan Cadigan was the same. So while they were scoring mountains of points, they weren't scoring enough goals. And the other thing was, those players had no interest in going back to field and tackling, really, outside of their own little zone. And I think Hardy, you'd say, he had a dip in form. I think that's because he was trying to do the work of 2 or 3 men in that forward line. I think now you see him the last couple of games, although he's hitting wides, he's involved in a team where everybody's working together, and that includes Robbie O'Flynn. He's running with the ball, he knows his role, and the management knew that as well. And I think Kingston dropped Horgan, don't forget, 2 or 3 years ago. And it really he upped his game straight away. He did, and he upped his game to a new level after that. So I think there are no doubt you're part of a team with this, and if that means getting less ball, then so be it.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be. We'll have a look at the benches just to finish up, because they are a big part of the game. And now Cody's using a bench for the first time in a long time. So Carey's not going to be on the bench. We reckon he's going to start now instead of Conor Brown. They'll have Alan Murphy, Killian Buckley, Walter Walsh, James Bergen. It's a solid bench, and we know the 2 big impacts that Cork have off the bench is young Barrett and Connolly. Connolly for me is the very same as Pat Ryan. Why is he only getting to 6-7 minutes instead of a
understand it? Yeah, and I know I'm kind of in love with him since I seen him play that county final with Blackrock. Like, he has something special, and he's able to win high ball as well. Like, he's
got got a goal against Tipperary in the league where he won a couple of huge high balls when he came on.
It's a head scratcher. Like 6-7 minutes, very hard to make an influence.
Don't start me, because I'm giving out about this every week.
And I definitely agree with you. Like, You know, look, if you look at who's starting, I think Shane Kingston does deserve to start. And in fairness to Kieran, he's never afraid to whip him off. He nearly, I'd say he's nearly guilty of actually whipping him off even when he's going well.
I know.
To be fair to him, the one weakness in Shane Kingston's, and Paddy kind of touched on it there, is he has the head down too much. He doesn't see passes sometimes when they're on. I don't know, is that greediness or just doesn't have the
I don't think he doesn't play with his head up. No.
Yeah, so it's if he brought that side to his game, Cork could even score more up front, because he's a very direct runner. He's one of the fastest players out there. We probably just don't see it enough. But I love Alan Connolly. I think he's top class. But he's sub number 2, like, you know. That's, you know, Barrett. But in fairness, Barrett is excellent. He's probably that little bit more consistent. But they're two serious forwards to be able to bring into that team.
Yeah, it was Sean O'Leary Hayes came on the last day. Colin Spillane is back in the mix. So geez, they're not shy on the bench either. Cork, like, I mean,
will Damien Catalan be back? I don't know. Like,
I know Cadigan could be back as well. I think
Cadigan was on the bench last day, so so like they certainly have a lot more experience there. You know, that's one thing about Cork. They probably learnt that lesson from when Limerick beat them in 2018 or 19 or 18. In that extra time where they just didn't have it, and they were trying to bring back on players as well. So since then, there's been that emphasis on building that panel. They certainly have it at the moment, but they'll need to use them, and I think they'll need to use them a lot sooner, because they'll be hoping, obviously, that they start 100 miles an hour. You know, they're running Kilkenny ragged, that they're trying to really turn Kilkenny on the back foot, and then to have those subs to come in and try and, you know, push it home. Yeah,
exactly right. Paddy, predictions. We'll start with you. This is a bit more difficult one, obviously.
Yeah, I think a lot more difficult, and actually the more we talk about it, I adjusted in my head that, you know, Kilkenny were going to outwork them, but Kilkenny haven't been overly convincing either this year. They still have holes in their team, but I would just pick them because we know exactly what we're going to get out of them in terms of effort and intensity. This Cork team is still a team that they have to reach another level to get over this match. Like, we have to see a level of aggression out of them, animalistic stuff that we haven't seen already. So I'd be very interested to see. I'd just say Kilkenny, just on that track record of against Cork and against teams who play a lot of, you know, fancier hurling, I suppose, but Kilkenny by a few points, I think.
Yeah, Brian?
From the start of this year, I've just had this inkling it's going to be Limerick-Kilkenny final. And if I've been brutally honest, being a neutral, I'd love to see a Limerick-Kilkenny final. I just think we'd see an all-out warfare. And I think it's been added, a little bit of spice has been there since 2019 as well, when Limerick pipped them, or Kilkenny pipped Limerick, and that controversy at the end as well. So I just love to see it, and I'd be the exact same as Paddy. My thought process would be the exact same in terms of that work rate, intensity of that Kilkenny team, and just the way they were able to perform against Wexford. I think it was well documented from the outset that game was huge between Wexford and Kilkenny. I think while Wexford weren't good against Clare for 45 minutes, I thought they threw the kitchen sink at Kilkenny, and it took a phenomenal performance to get over that line against Wexford. So I think Kilkenny have that ability, and they've shown it over the last couple of years that they can raise their game to a level that we just haven't seen from Cork yet.
Yeah,
well, the beauty is we could see it.
But that's the thing, Brian. Just to finish up, is that I'd agree. Smart money's on Kilkenny, but on Monday, if we're in here saying that Cork team has come of age, now you know, like, would you be surprised if you said that? You wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah. No. And the thing is, if they won that, if they can beat this Kilkenny team, like, they're gunning to get back at Limerick, you know. So, but they wouldn't want to do a Tipperary and be focusing on Limerick.
No, definitely not. Right, so we're all in agreement here today, Les. 3 Kilkennys and 3.
That's rare is wonderful.
We're kind of half sitting on the fence by saying you wouldn't be surprised though if Cork.
Yeah.
Right, we'll leave it there, Les. Thanks very much. We'll be back on Monday. We'll obviously review. Second last Monday show. The season's gone way too fast. We'll be back on Monday and we'll talk to you all then. Good luck.